Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Carrie with you today, and I am going to be doing a card that's a little bit different for me and a little bit more experimental on my part. Today I'm going to be using this stamp set from Avery, Elle called Floral Bouquet. This is one of my favorite floral sets that I own. I don't have too many in my collection, but this is definitely one of my favorites. I think it's just the overall simplicity of the illustration of these flowers that I love so much, so it doesn't feel too intimidating to me in that regard. So I'm going to start off by taking a piece of black cardstock, and I'm going to be embossing this image onto that panel that I have already die cut. I used a right at home stitched rectangle die to die cut my panel, and I am going to position my stamp onto my panel at exactly where I want it to go. And then I'm also going to put my sentiment on here as well and kind of do it all in one pass here. And I'm going to ink up my stamp with my Versamark ink. You could already see that I have prepped my cardstock piece with my anti-static powder tool. And I'm going to make sure that I'm going to give this stamp really good and covered with my Versamark, because this is, even though it's a simple design as far as the flowers go, it is a little bit detailed with where the middle of the flowers and such. So I want to make sure that I get all of that detail as much as possible when I'm stamping this down. So I got a pretty good impression the very first time, so I'm going to go ahead and take my panel out of my Misty here and then coat this with my Hero Arts Brass Embossing Powder. This is one of my favorites. I love it because it's between obviously a brass color and a gold. It's not too much of one or the other. I like it because it's kind of a good in between. So I'm going to coat this very well, making sure that I get all that image coated well with this powder. And then I'm going to, of course, heat set it with my heat tool. And as I'm doing this, I'm making sure that I don't have any granules left over, because obviously this is black cardstock. So once I emboss this, it will be noticeable. So I want to make sure that I get all the stray embossing powder that I don't want off of that panel. So I'm going to heat set this good and make sure that it's all good and melted. No granules left behind that's not melted. So I'm going to go ahead and start my watercolor part now. So I'm going to get all that residual powder off of my panel here. I'm just kind of wiping that off with my hand, no big deal. And so now I'm going to put this, get my watercolors ready. You can kind of see in the upper left hand corner there my watercolors that I'm going to be using. The watercolor set that I am going to be using today is my Gansai Tambi Watercolors. I've had these watercolors for a couple years now, but surprisingly enough, I have never used them on camera. And the reason for that is, to be completely honest and be completely transparent with you guys, is that they intimidate me. And it's not the fact that they're watercolors, it's just because that they are so much more opaque than anything else that I own. But I wanted to dive into them today. I really felt inspired by a few videos from a few different crafters, and I wanted to try and kind of branch out and do something different. So I'm just taking my little water brush here. This is just a regular water brush that's got some water in the reservoir there. And obviously I've sped this up quite a bit because this just took me a little bit of time. But my overall thought process whenever I was doing this was thinking that, wouldn't it be pretty if I did the kind of like the gold brassy color in this watercolor set and kind of create my own look of a rosy gold look to these flowers? Because I really love the look of rose gold, but I wanted to kind of achieve it in my way, in my head at least, on these flowers. So I did test this out just a little bit before I did start this, because I didn't want this to be a complete hot mess. Because if you've tried watercolor at all, you know that whenever you start doing watercolor, at first it looks like that you're just creating a mess with watercolor, and I guess overall that you are. But you've got to be patient, and you've got to really let this dry down into the paper. And once it does dry, your results will, more than times than not, be a really great result. So I did add a couple of layers. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, you're doing this on regular cardstock. But in this instance, it was quite all right, because I wasn't using, even though I was using my little water brush, I was not using a whole lot of water. I was using more pigment than I was the water. And so if I was getting a little bit too much water onto my image here, I would have a little paper towel nearby, and so I would wipe off that water. So majority of what you're seeing is more pigment than water. So do keep that in mind if you do try this for yourself. It is more the pigment of the watercolor than the water itself. So like I said, I did do this a few times because obviously as it dries back, it does look different before as whenever you were initially adding the watercolor. So I did let those flowers dry just a little bit, and I will go back in eventually and kind of mix the two colors together onto a palette. You won't see that off on camera because I kind of did it off camera. But I kind of mixed the two, the red color and the metallic color together, and then I added just one more coat to those flowers. And I think it turned out pretty well. And so now I'm going to add just a little bit of green tint to my leaves here. And I had to do this several times too because I wasn't adding a metallic. And I think the metallic, since it has a little bit of more of that, I guess, pigment or mica or whatever that's in it, it kind of grabs onto the watercolor a little bit more that I put on top. So whenever I was doing the leaves, obviously I wasn't adding anything extra to the leaves, just the watercolor. So I did do it a few times, and it in person it does give it a really nice green tint to the cardstock, and it really looks nice. So this is now completely dried, and you can see it kind of does give it that rose gold effect, which I was going for, and it's kind of mottled. It's not, perfect, but it's exactly that tint of rosy gold that I was going for. So now I'm going to add back in some details to these flowers because obviously the middle's got the little bit of the middle detail got lost. So I thought I would take some of these enamel accents that I have. I don't have any Nouveau drops in black, which I want to get. I want to get white and black, but I was using what I had. So I added the little bit of the a black enamel accents to the middle of the flowers to just give the extra detail. And then I was going to go ahead and add the white to the little buds or little edges around the flowers just to make them pop and stand out from the rest of the card. So this is pretty quick and simple card to do, but it's an overall different look for me personally because I've got black on black and it's all metallic, and obviously I'm doing watercolor, so it's all of a different experiment today, and I just wanted to show you guys how it all turned out for me. So I'm just adding some tape runner on the back of my A2 size card base here, and obviously it's black, so I just really wanted that image to stand out because it is the star of the show of my card. So that really completes the end of the card, guys. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Thank you guys so much for watching. All the supplies that I did use will be listed and linked below the video if you're interested. Otherwise, thank you so much, and I will catch you guys in my next video. Bye!